Alright, hello there. Today is Sunday, August 12th, 2018. I'm still in New York, as you can tell. I'm still in the process of trying to head to Delmarva later today. Hopefully after I edit this I should be leaving, but I couldn't leave without finding out about the story Matt Kamper was featured in. That was on Newsday.com, and I couldn't really read it on my old computer because it'll just take that long to process everything, and honestly I don't have time when I'm trying to get out of here. But yes, we're going to read together the article that Matt Kamper was featured in on Newsday.com. So let me get to it right now and we'll get started. So here's the article that Matt Kamper was featured in. Here's what the article says. MTA board, Philip Eng still the right guy to lead the Long Island Railroad ship. MTA board chairman Joe Lota says he is impressed with the new CEO, and despite the Long Island Railroad's recent woes, expects a new outlook. So this is interesting to say the least what Joe Lota said. And of course, Alfonso Castillo, he is Newsday's Long Island Railroad reporter, pretty much covered this story, and he was the one who interviewed Matt Kamper back on Thursday, August 9th. So we'll read the article together now. So MTA Chairman Joe Lota still believes new Long Island Railroad President Philip Eng is the right person to turn around the struggling agency, even as a growing number of riders say the quality of commutes have deteriorated sharply under the new leadership. Lota, the head of the MTA, said rather than hold against Eng the series of mishaps the Long Island Railroad has encountered this summer, including 3 derailments within 2 weeks and 3 straight days of snarled rush hours last week, he has been impressed with the railroad's president's response to every obstacle he has encountered. Here is what Mr. Lota said. What's amazed me is how quickly in each and every one of these incidents, Mr. Eng is on the spot. Mr. Eng has deployed and redeployed resources, and the railroad has come back up very quickly. Well, it's quoted as saying, and the railroad comes back up quickly, but that's how I would say it if I were Mr. Lota. Anyhow, Mr. Lota was also quoted saying, a lot faster than it had. My confidence in Mr. Eng is as high today as when he was appointed president of the Long Island Railroad back in the spring, pretty much. So, forward confidence is not shared by some railroad commuters who say they have been enduring one of the most prolonged stretches of miserable services they can remember. A Change.org petition started Wednesday by Comac commuter Eric Tringle calls for fair refunds for riders who have endured mental and physical anguish at the hands of the Long Island Railroad, received nearly 1,200 signatures in its first day. So, I don't really want to sign that petition because remember everyone, I'm only a weekly rider on the Long Island Railroad. So if I was taking it, let's say 5 days a week, then I would have every right to be outraged with the Long Island Railroad. But since I only ride it once a week, that petition's really not for me to sign in that sense. So it's a good idea. I think it's good for monthly people. I'll just quickly talk about that for a second. But if you are only a person who rides the Long Island Railroad weekly, like just once a week round trip, I wouldn't recommend signing that petition. Just saying. But if you ride it like 5 or 6 or 7 days a week, then I would encourage you to sign a petition. So here's what Mr. Tringle had said. I have been commuting out of Ronkonkoma since late 1991. Throughout all those years, it's never been as bad as it is now, said Michelle Meyer, who has battered the Long Island Railroad on Twitter in recent weeks over unreliable service and woeful communications with customers. Despite Eng having joined the railroad just 4 months ago, Mayor has already called for his resignation and has frequent Long Island Railroad Babylon user Matt Kamper of East Meadow. "I think it's warranted," said Mr. Kamper, a frequent critic of the Long Island Railroad on social media, and on his YouTube channel, quoted as saying, "Some stuff, obviously the maintenance and stuff like that, it can't happen overnight. But the communication, I thought, would be a lot better than it has been." Well, they've been communicating with us a whole lot better these days. But we're going to talk about the flaws of the Long Island Railroad that were not really properly communicated this week as a whole. And I'll quickly mention that it was also mentioned on News 12 about that incident on the Huntington branch. We will discuss this because it was also featured in this article. Alright. Article continues to say, Mr. Ng, a lifelong Long Islander and Smithtown resident, says he sympathizes with his fellow commuters and remains confident that the answer to many of the railroad's ailments is his Long Island Railroad Forward initiative, which aims to spend $132 million over the next 4 years on various service improvements. So I'm hoping in this case, maybe there'll be better stuff coming to the Long Island Railroad. That includes, I don't know, more signal and track maintenance. That's the first issue. Just saying. Alright, Philip Ng was quoted saying they have the right to their opinion, and I know that it's my intention is to gain their trust, and in the case of the ones who are calling for my resignation to regain their trust, I care tremendously about what we're doing. I wouldn't have taken this position if I didn't believe we could turn this around. I know right now it looks like the same Long Island Railroad, but it's a different attitude and it's a different approach. Well, two things I want to mention. Number one, in the link, I'm going to have a link in the description, alright? We have a change.com petition sent out by Jason Anthony Pinero. If you haven't heard about it, he is a transit advocate like Matt Kamper is, and he has his own YouTube channel. And he did this change.com petition, which I signed last night, to urge Elisa Piccas, the executive vice president, to resign. Throughout the 4 months that Philip Ng has been president, he has shown better communication skills. But the leadership right now is his fault in a way. It's not really fair to call for a resignation of Philip Ng. It's more fair to call for Elisa Piccas' resignation, because she is the main problem when it comes to not fixing the issues on the Huntington, Port Jefferson, Ronkonkoma, Oyster Bay branches as a whole on the main line. I wouldn't really call Hempstead part of the main line. It goes on the tracks, but more people do use the Oyster Bay, Port Jefferson, Huntington, and Ronkonkoma branches as a whole. And those are the people that are still being forgotten about thanks to this woman. And I feel at the end of the day, she needs to resign from the board. It's not Philip Ng's fault. All this time it was Patrick Nowakowski who let this happen in the first place. That's why we called for him to resign. Now we want somebody from the previous administration to resign. And who would that be? None other than Elisa Piccas. So please take a look at that this article in the description below. I was supposed to make a second point right now. I forgot what it was because my parents are yelling in the background. But again, it's not fair to call for Philip Ng's resignation. I really wouldn't call for it. I know why Matt's calling for it, because he wants leadership and he wants people fired. It is time to clean house. I agree with that, but I'm just going to say this now. If you want him to resign, and I'm going to be fair about this, I would wait at least another year. And if these issues do happen again, and Elisa Piccas is still somehow on this board a year from now, I would say, let's say this is 2019 right now. We're talking on Monday, August 12th, 2019. A whole year from today, right? And you're watching this video. It's a year from now, right? And we're still facing the same issues that are in this article. That would be fair to call for Philip Ming's resignation. He needs a year. I feel he needs a year in order to see what he can do. But right now, in order to have our voices heard, please just sign that petition. And we need Elisa Piccas to resign from the board immediately. So I know I went a little bit off topic, but I had to mention that. But overall, I've enjoyed Philip Ming's run so far. He is doing the best he can, but he needs a new board. That's all I'm going to say. He needs a brand new board of the Long Island Railroad who will put the main line first. In order to get the main line fixed, you fire the people who were in the previous administration. That's the way you fix this. And Philip Ming doesn't want to do that right now because he's scared he may lose his job. And he's scared he may get yelled at by Joe Lota. Well, I would risk my job any day to fix the main line. Just saying. So anyhow, here's some numbers the Long Island Railroad's on-time performance metrics has measured since 2017. Pretty much in 2017, in 2016, it had one of the worst performing rate in 18 years. Throughout June of 2017, the Long Island Railroad reported 90.5% of its trains running on time, slightly better than the first six. Oh, okay, so this is June of 2018, excuse me. So the number drastically improved from June of 2017. Statistics were not yet available for July, so 2018 the number was 90.5%, 90.1% 2017. Okay, statistics were not yet available made for last month, which was July of this year, which saw several rush hour trains stalled by long delays and cancellation and news caused by derailment near Penn. So, what happened last month, if you don't remember, a train derailed near the East Side Yard. And that's why the Long Island Railroad can't really give us those numbers yet. If I were to give a fair assumption of when the numbers could come out with regards to the performance metrics of the trains coming on time, my personal opinion would be probably after Labor Day. That's going to take some time to measure those statistics if you really want to be specific about that. So, more to go on. It says Long Island Railroad officials noted that some recent improvements have already made a difference, although they might not be readily apparent to customers. Since the Long Island Railroad elevated its Post Avenue Bridge in Westbury back in October, there have been no mainline disruptions caused by a train striking the overpass there. So pretty much they've risen the Post Avenue Bridge in Westbury, but I will notice this. Well, I have noticed this year, is that whenever the Huntington train is going on to switching the tracks, it always happens eastbound. They're always switching tracks near Carl Place of Westbury. So the article fails to mention that, every time we leave Mineola on the Huntington branch, it always seems that every time we switch tracks, it always happens on the Huntington branch. So they forgot to mention about track switching. And after witnessing a sharp increase in the number of incidents of motorists accidentally driving on the Long Island Railroad tracks at grain crossings, Mr. Eng expedited I can't read this word, I'm sorry. A project to install new safety devices at all 296 of its crossings, completing it last week, months ahead of schedule. Eng said there have been no resurgence of such accidents at crossings since they have gotten the upgrades. So pretty much, they have trying to reduce the amount of incidents of cars and vehicles going near the railroad tracks. So pretty much after what happened at Mineola earlier this year when the lady drove onto the tracks by accident, that That's why you've noticed not that many incidents of people driving onto the railroad tracks. Alright, so Mr. Loda hadn't picked Mr. Ng to run the Long Island Railroad in April after expressing his dissatisfaction with what he said was a lack of urgency in addressing systematic problems of the railroad. Those included were highlighted in a report issued back on Tuesday, August 7th by the New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli that examined several service disruptions last winter and found that the railroad did not have plans in place to respond to many of them in other cases. And again, we can blame that on Patrick Nowakowski. The controller also said they didn't follow the protocols that were in place. Joe Loda said back on Thursday, August 9th, he believes under Philip Ng, it's a different Long Island Railroad. Phil knows what it means to be able to respond quickly, said Mr. Loda. He believes the same as I believe. They're just not riders, they're customers. We've got to be able to provide them the best possible service. Phil understands that. Well, Phil understands that, but Elisa Piccas doesn't understand that. Alright, William Henderson, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Action Advisory Committee to the MTA Rider Watchdog Group, agreed it was too early to pass judgment on Ng or his Long Island Railroad Forward initiative, but understood why many commuters have already done so. Well, I'm going to say this again. I'm not frustrated. I'm not frustrated at Philip Ng. I'm frustrated at the board member, Elisa Piccas. That's who I'm annoyed with. Alright, so I'm not really going to get into it that much. More people were... I do want to get to the bottom of the article. So here's what's been going on the railroad this summer. If you really want to call it the summer of hell. So let's go through a timeline of what's happened this summer. Back on July 1st, the snobs got screwed on the Babylon branch. Signal trouble at Babylon caused widespread delays in the Babylon and Montauk branches throughout the evening rush, with some trains running up to an hour late. July 9th, signal trouble outside the East River tunnels and later at Babylon caused multiple delays and cancellations during the morning and evening rush hours. July 11th, the disabled Amtrak train just west of Woodside caused delays and cancellations throughout the evening rush. July 13th, the Long Island Railroad temporarily suspended service between Jamaica and Penn Station during the morning rush after a train struck and killed a person on the tracks near Woodside. July 16th, Amtrak's late completion of scheduled work inside one of the East River tunnels resulted in delays and cancellations of the Long Island Railroad throughout the morning rush. July 21st, the Long Island Railroad train derailment just west of Penn Station caused cancellations and delays throughout the morning and evening rush. On Monday, July 23rd, the Long Island Railroad failed to notify the public about the derailment until more than 24 hours after it occurred. July 28th, another derailment at a station yard in Jamaica resulted in one Montauk-bound train running with half as many cars as usual. August 1st, the third Long Island Railroad train derailed near Woodside with carrying more than 400 passengers, snarling service on the Port Washington line for much of the day, including throughout the evening rush. August 6th, two fatal track accidents in Woodside and Hicksville, both investigated as suicide, caused cancellations and delays throughout the morning rush. Later on, a central islip switch problem, a signal issue in Huntington, a weather-related track problem in equipment storage, and a broken crossing gate in New Hyde Park caused several more service problems throughout the evening rush. August 7th, just last week, a lightning strike at an electrical substation in New Hyde Park sparked a fire that caused the Long Island Railroad to suspend all service on the main line, Oyster Bay, Huntington, Port Jeff, and Ronkonkoma branches for more than 2 hours. August 8th, the power failure suspected to have been caused by another lightning strike in New Hyde Park resulted in delays of more than half an hour on the Ronkonkoma, Port Jefferson, and Oyster Bay branches during the morning rush, with multiple trains canceled. August 10th, switch trouble near Mineola caused delays of 10 to 15 minutes on the Ronkonkoma, Port Jefferson, and Oyster Bay branches throughout the morning commute. So pretty much what I'm going to say here is this. I thought this chaos was going to happen last year, thanks to the Amtrak work at Penn Station. It turns out this year, I'm going to call it, everyone, thanks to this article with all the timeline of events that go back all the way to last month. all the way to July. This is officially the summer of hell on the Long Island Railroad. It has happened. And I hope it never happens again. And that's what Phil Lang's trying to do. But again, he needs to clean house. That's the only way you're going to fix this problem. Alright, more hell. Of course, we've been talking about on the service changes video. Schedule track work related to a number of Long Island Railroad infrastructure projects, including its installation of positive train control technology. Of course, on the Port Washington branch, its East Side Access project for, of course, the trains going into and out of Grand Central for service to start in 2022. And its construction of a second track between Farmingdale and Ronkonkoma resulted in several scheduled service outages throughout the summer, especially on weekends. The weekend changes include reduced Brooklyn and Port Washington service and buses replacing trains between Farmingdale and Ronkonkoma. One noticeable change under the Philip Byng administration, even though it's still the same clowns from Patrick Nowakowski's administration, is that there are no school buses transporting adults between Ronkonkoma and Hicksville. Most of the buses now for the Bustitution have included coach buses and also the MTA bus fleet of the coach buses that are used for interborough routes. So that's pretty much where the article ends. We don't really need to get into it that much, but very good article from Alfonso Castillo, and at the end I'll quickly mention that there are, of course, more stuff that Philip Byng wants to do. This article will be in the description below, along with the change.org petition for the resignation of Elisa Piccas. So that will be in the description below. That's going to wrap up this video. Overall, my reaction to this article was very good. I just felt that Matt Kamper, in my opinion, and I'm going to say this again, it's too early to call for Philip Byng's resignation. I'm going to mention this again. We can be back here a whole year from now. We could be having this whole same conversation. We need to give Philip Byng a year. And if the same stuff happens again, then it's time to call for his resignation. But for now, give the man a chance. I'm going to mention this. Once September comes, he's going to have complete creative control of the Long Island Railroad. Because remember, there's still some Patrick Nowakowski stuff that's still put into place. After we get past September, maybe we'll see service change. Who knows? Maybe we'll finally get eastbound half-hourly service back between New Hyde Park and Hicksville. That's what I'm hoping. But until then, we're stuck with this mess. That's where I'm going to end it. Thank you for watching. Again, if you want to read the article for yourself, it's in the description below. Until the next one, take care.